Okay, it's 4 o'clock on the dot. While people are dialing in, I suggest let's start. So good morning, good evening, welcome everyone to our weekly X-Space, where we explore industry trends and deep dive into all things related to decentralized physical infrastructure, networks, or in short, DePIN. First call to action is, as always, please share this on your Twitter and X when you get a chance. My name is Sebastian. I'm part of the community marketing team here at ICN. And today we have an exciting lineup of speakers from diverse industries. So I'll give some room for introductions in a second. Welcome Ranveer from Witness Chain and Prashant from Spheron. Great to have you guys. We will be discussing the DePIN verification problem and its intersection with AI. And in this engaging discussion ahead, I will, of course, as always, invite the audience. Please feel free to ask questions at any time. We'll pick up from the chat as we go along, or alternatively toward the end when we have time. So as teased already, Prashant, do you want to give a quick introduction about who you are and the project you represent?
Sure, Sebastian, and thank you so much for having me here. Glad to meet you, Ranveer, as well here. So just to kind of quickly get started, I'm Prashant Maurya and been working with Spheron as a CEO and the co-founder for the past 3 years, close to. And in the Web3, I have been like close to around 5 years, given all the bits and pieces of my time, mostly into the infrastructure space. So everything around infrastructure, you can always refer me for any Q&A. Coming to Spheron, what we are trying to build, it's simple. It's a GPU, decentralized GPU network, mainly focused and designed for developers and the startups who are looking forward to build on top, or they are looking forward to utilize the existing GPU capacity, which we are bringing across the world. There are a couple of things which we do with Spheron very differently. It's basically like all of those verification layer, tiering systems, and all of those things to bring back the trustless way of building the marketplaces. So yeah, that is what we do, Sebastian. Thank you.
Awesome. Looking forward to your insights. Ranveer.
Hi, thanks for having me here. Great to be between these panelists. So a little bit about me and Witness Chain. So we started Witness Chain. I'm the co-founder of Witness Chain. We started around 3 years ago. In my past life, I used to work on blockchains. And what we realized is, blockchain is a great trust broker. It's a decentralized trust broker, which makes it very powerful at like building all sorts of applications. But it's very restricting in the sense that it's limited to the digital world, right? And that limitation comes from its consensus mechanism. The goal with which Witness Chain started, and it has been doing that so forth, is to bring that decentralized verification mechanisms to the real world. How do you prove real physical attributes? And that's what we work at. By establishing these verification mechanisms, we enable programmability and composability across all things physical in the real world. That's the short of it. Happy to go into details throughout the panel.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining you both. Maybe some quick words about the Possible Cloud Network for those of you who don't know. We're essentially a multi-service cloud platform. So we're connecting cloud service provider with top-tier infrastructure. So in that sense, we're trying to decentralize the cloud with an emphasis on high performance and service quality, right? So key participants of the ecosystem are hardware providers that operate out of top-tier data centers and service providers that offer competitive cloud services. So we're trying to bring the Web3 to the real business customers on top of high-performance hardware. So the third aspect in our ecosystem, and also why we're having the discussion here today with Prashant and Ranveer, is that we're going to host an event for you, the community, in Singapore. Just maybe 1 minute on that for those of you who don't know. It will take place on the 19th during the Token 2049 week from 12 to 5 p.m. in the Fullerton Hotel, so right across from the MBS, where the convention will be held. It's going to be an exciting afternoon. Really looking forward to this. More or less 2 weeks from now, focusing on leadership, innovation, networking. So it's going to be co-hosted by the three of us. So Witness Chain, Spheron Network, and Impossible Cloud Network. And we're going to bring together pioneers from DePIN and AI. Just for some information, during the last event, we had guests from Filecoin, Peak, Demo, Fluence, Pocket, A16Z, so great lineup, and we're going to announce more on our actual event again in 2 weeks, September 19th, soon on X. Any questions, feel free to reach out to us or via Prashant. Happy to answer any questions you may have. All right, let's dive into the X space on the topic of understanding DeepIn and its verification problem. Maybe starting with you, Ranveer, maybe you can provide your understanding of the term DeepIn and why it's significant in the current technological landscape.
So first of all, nobody in the crypto space is in agreement on what any term means, right? So here's my definition of DeepIns, right? So in our classification, all physical infrastructure gets classified within DeepIn. Traditionally, physical infrastructure requires very high capital to be developed, and that's why it's been limited to big, either big corporations, I like to call them dinosaurs, or governments. Now, DeepIns provide a completely new economic primitive for developing physical infrastructure, which is where the ownership is decentralized. Now, what's the advantage of making ownership decentralized? Well, first of all, infrastructure networks is geographically decentralized because of, coverage, latency, all sorts of reasons. And second, a lot of market information exists on the edge, right? So I know if me and my neighbors need a wireless coverage, or I know if I have my neighbors who are playing games and they need GPUs, right? So a lot of market information resides in the edge, and DeepIn's decentralized ownership, edge-based ownership, is a way to capture that efficient and develop these networks in a more cost-effective and programmable manner. That's my crux of it. Take any physical infrastructure network, make the ownership decentralized, and that's a DeepIn.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I always bring up the quote from Adrian from Pocket, who once mentioned that it's a gateway drug to Web3. And I really endorse that because, it's understandable for everybody and it brings, the true value of bootstrapping a network, and how that can be used by everybody. So really great. Maybe you can focus
I'm going to borrow that from now on.
Props to her. Anyway, so maybe you can focus a bit on the DeepIn verification problem and your kind of focus area. So what are the problems that come with, bootstrapping large amounts of hardware, whatever that may be, and what is your angle to overcome that?
Yeah, so first of all, let me begin with the motivation for why you would need a verification layer, right? So to begin with, when you're bootstrapping these networks, these are typically incentivized networks. What this means is you're getting paid for providing this service. Otherwise, it would be like BitTorrent, right? So since it's incentivized, you need a trustless, verifiable way to know whether a certain task was performed by your infrastructure provider. Is it that it provided service? Or you need to know whether there is a capacity for providing service by your infrastructure provider, right? So this verification is very important at the bootstrap phase. But once a network is bootstrapped, this verification is also important to make sure that your infrastructure compose into one another, right? So right now, when you have deals between two companies who provide infrastructure, be it a storage provider and a compute provider or something like that, it's supported by legal contracts, right? In a decentralized space, you can't rely on that. So you need an enforcement framework. And that enforcement framework requires observability into the truth, right? Into the truth in the real world. And that is what verification solves. Now, how is this verification? A common confusion is that how is this verification different from the typical verification you see in blockchains? Don't blockchains solve the problem of verifying things? Well, they do that, but they only do it for the state within the blockchains. In short, they do it whenever it's pure compute, right? Whereas when you look at physical infrastructure, verification is not just pure compute. It's also physical attributes. I'll give a few examples of what we do, right? There's proof of location, something like proof of bandwidth, right? Both of these, let me focus on location, for example. So if you want to verify the location of a physical asset, it's not compute based, it's physics based, right? You are located at a particular region. People can observe you or people can ping you and triangulate you and so forth. all of that information has to be gathered by witnesses in the real world. And then it has to be processed in a Byzantine fault-tolerant way. So these verification mechanisms are significantly different from what you see in compute-based proofs that the crypto landscape is filled with. And that's the biggest differentiator here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe for those who are not that familiar with these physical attributes, can you provide a use case that maybe in the GPU space where your proofs could come in?
Amazing. So I would provide two, like let's take location for example, right? So one use case is like folks in Europe would know, like a lot of places would have regulations that you need certain compute to be performed within certain geographical boundaries. So what that means is you need to know that your compute servers that you're allocating jobs to have to be located within Europe or within the US, something like that. Now, in order to make sure that that happens in traditional infrastructure, there are legal contracts and there are legal repercussions if that doesn't happen. Right? In the DPN space, you need to know the location of your GPU asset to know where your data is being processed. And that's where, you can use location of your GPU cluster. One thing I would like to nail down here is that like our protocol, like proof of location, runs without any special hardware requirements, or like it needs it just needs a computer connected to a PC. So a GPU is in some sense a computer connected to the internet, right? And once we have a computer connected to the internet, we use internet delays to like triangulate the location in a Byzantine fault tolerant way. Now, an opposite example of this is sometimes you want all of your, like rather than decentralization, you might want all of your nodes to be located within the same data center. So let's say you're performing a huge compute task, and co-located GPUs sometimes have significantly better performance than GPUs that are separated. And you can use proof of location to determine, okay, like are these GPUs located within the same region and they have less latency for co-processing something together. And you can use this location attribute to select GPUs that are co-located.
Awesome. Makes a lot of sense. Maybe from our side, some insights on this as well, why this is really useful. So if I think back when I started as Impossible Cloud, actually, which is one of our service providers, it's an object storage solution. When I was in the sales department over there, one of the key aspects of clients, because Europe at this time was our focus market, one of the key aspects, of course, was, okay, where's my data hosted, right? We focus on storage, meaning the key aspect and the use case was the backup. So the backup of the company is really key, right? It's the heart and soul. So the key question was, all right, where is it stored? And can you confirm that somehow, right? So that's exactly where that proof could come in and solve that problem, right? Amazing. So, Ranveer, where do you think we currently are when you think about the market readiness of DeepIn and your proofs? Can you shed a bit of light on that?
Yeah, so I think DeepIns have, historically proven their capacity to gather supply, right? And they've been great at doing that. And right now we have been seeing a bit of maturation on that side. And what we've seen the next phase grow up, which is like now people are working on developer platforms, marketplaces, and we have protocols here like Spheron, who is excelling in making sure that there is sufficient demand for the network and developer platforms and developer ease, right? So now we are at the demand stage, more from a P2P side. The next stage in the DeepIn would be where you would provide where you can like provide enterprise grade services to like the end consumers of DeepIns. You can provide SLAs and so forth, and that's where we see like the demand for verification to really shoot up. To give you specifics on like just on just witness machine side, we have integrated with DeepIns across various verticals, including GPU DeepIns. Our proof of diligence has been on mainnet for some time. Location has been on testnet, and we'll be moving to mainnet soon.
Great news. Fantastic. Maybe Prashant, if we go to the Spheron side of things. So we've discussed As Ranveer said, everybody has a different definition of deepin. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. How do you understand it, and maybe how that intersects with the decentralized GPU space and AI?
Yeah, sure. I think I go with the Ranveer's definition because he has just put that quite straightforward. But when I did not heard a lot of definitions, for me it was very straightforward. It's like there is something which is physically present, and when you bring that physical infrastructure to and connect you to the real world, like basically to make it used, that is how I started getting it for myself initially. It became more interesting when and again, it's a debate. Okay. So debate is going to be is between like, are we going to call these GPU infrastructures or anyone like that as a DeepIn, or are we going to be calling and bracketing them into the decentralized virtual infrastructures? I had a very, very, very nice chart through around it, and Multicoin and all of these guys have written a very nice thread around it, where we should put as a DeepIn and where we should put as a DeepIn. So that is what my this is like anything which physically presents and connect to the digital world and exposed to the end user, which can be used and go again economically connected. That is what DeepIn is all about, and also the DeepIn. Now coming to the GPU space, like for me, it is when I started like working on this particular problem statement. The one thing which I loved about it is like imagine in India or imagine in Europe or imagine in the US or anywhere in the world, um, like we have this massive amount of compute which are lying idle in our houses, our data centers. Because before even I jumped into that, I had a lot of chats with data centers also. And most of them, like not the entire capacity is already used, right? So hardly 20-25% of their capacity has been used. So we thought like, okay, so is there a very interesting way to kind of work on this solution to bring those GPUs forward? And that is when we kind of landed into this space to make that happen. And since AI was booming up and people just don't need like GPUs for only for AI, there are multiple other cases also. For example, ZK co-processor and all of those stuff which are also getting built, they also require GPUs. It's not just an AI, which is one of the core use cases, but there are multiple use cases which are going to get built around it. So we thought like, okay, let's go ahead and do that. And that is where we ended up in building an entire DeepIn network for the GPU as well. We currently have good amount of GPUs from different providers. And the beauty of this is they all are from different locations interconnected with our on-chain state, and it just works flawlessly, beautifully. And since Ranveer and these guys have already solved the problem for proof of location, now we don't even have to worry about legal regulations and all of those stuff. So yeah, that is what my understanding, and that is where GPU and AI basically plays a role into DeepIn space.
That's very interesting what you mentioned, that there's more use cases beyond AI. Is there any specific use case that you guys focus on?
For one is very interesting, like so a lot of these parallel processing, right? So imagine if you go to healthcare sector and all of these sectors, right? So there are specific use cases where you have to process those user-generated contours and all of those stuff. Like contour is basically like, let's say somebody has a cancer and there is a cancerous cell which is in between, and then you basically get to that cell and create a specific imagery around it, and so that radiotherapy can happen quite easily. So those areas where GPUs are going to be like playing a very massive role. The second area is going to be ZK like ecosystem as well. Like so, a lot of these ZK circuits today, if you kind of look at, I was just looking at some of the configuration, like so it was massive amount of CPUs which they were consuming to kind of like achieve these things. But the same can also be parallelized utilizing the GPU co-processors, and it can speed up. And there are teams who are already working on it to make it happen. So that's the second use case which we are also focused on.
Very insightful, makes sense. So we have healthcare and ZK co-processors. Prashant, what do you, going into this space, where was kind of the gap that you saw, and how do you think that GPU or decentralized GPU and DeepIn in general can solve that gap?
So the biggest gap, for me, it was more realistic problem statement. When GPU came into the picture, it was quite expensive for normal people to lease out. Not normal, like even like I can like even for us also it become expensive, right? A lot of times like the if you already lease out H100s and other machines. So initially, if you remember, like so the cost of leasing out H100 was around $8 per hour and $12 per hour, depending on which cloud you were accessing. And then over the time, it just got reduced. But initially, that was the case, right? And it was very tough for anyone to go and lease out and perform or train or fine tune or do anything around those GPUs because it was very expensive. And that too, if you are targeting a very like even developed nations as well, it becomes very expensive. So that was the gap which we felt. The second was is around the use cases, like so bringing these smaller hardware and devices, right? So today we have something called FizzNode and Spheron, which is very unique to our system. So those FizzNode, what they do is they connect the hardware, existing hardwares, and bring it to the virtual world via the provider network, and those hardwares can be accessed quite seamlessly. That was the second use case which can bring like that's that was very close to my heart because that what it basically does, it basically solves a lot of environmental issues as well. If you guys don't know, like, so there, like, let me just give you one context. There are a lot of these ships, container ships, and a lot of these hardware which we produce every day, every month, and those hardwares are yet to be dumped, and they are still waiting on the ports to be get dumped, right? And that too in a very safe and environmental friendly way. So our first theory was like how we can think about something which is also more environment friendly, like where we allow people to, instead of dumping those hardwares, they can, instead of you go and replace it with or buy it with different hardwares, you keep that hardware as it is and you can just make money out of it, like the incentive and economics layer around it. So that became one of our also core vision for Spheron, is like how we can make that happen. So these were the couple of gaps, and the third was is again the centralization and other part. The biggest, like being a maxi around the Web3, I always imagine information should not be controlled by anyone, either it is government or either it is us as individuals. If you go and lease out a GPU today on any centralized servers, the only problem is they can shut you down at any given point of time. Like let's say if they don't like what you are doing there, they can just go ahead and do that because all the proxy and everything has been like routed by them. That was quite anti for our thought process as well in multiple cases. So and we said like, okay, with the DeepIn, it can solve it, where we go and deploy everything peer to peer, and being a protocol, we just play a role of ensuring like the efficiency, stability, security, and location and everything is done. But rest, switching off your servers should not be in our control because you are paying for it. Like you should have all the controls. There should not be censorship around it. So that was one of the motivations as well, like to kind of get into that space and fill that gap in via DeepIn.
Yeah, I especially love the sustainability aspect. I'll actually expand on that by saying that, when you distribute or decentralize the ownership and by whom this is being done, I think overall there's a saying that there's always more smart people than you can ever hire for your own company. Like if you have others basically, fine tuning several aspects simultaneously without and by being owners of the company, i.e., the decentralized ownership aspect, and that actually makes it additionally, that's an additional benefit to the whole storyline that you portrayed just now. Prashant, maybe one other thing, you talked about all these advantages. What are some of the challenges that you see in the space right now?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We always talk about the beautiful part, not the bad part. So there are a lot of challenges, right? So the first challenge was if you are building a physical infrastructure. So there are two kind of physical infrastructure, right? The one is the real world asset kind of infrastructure where you have this real estate which somebody can verify, validate. You can check the documentation, and all of this is done. The second is what we are doing at Spheron and what you guys are also doing at ICN. And also what Ranveer is trying to like bring that security angle and like proof of location angle into that is proving the digital infrastructure, like how, like, are they really the same one who is coming to the network or not? There are multiple ways where people are trying to basically come up with the solution of verification issues. There are teams like we, for example, we have built this trust-less decentralized auditors who basically audit this compute right network. So that is something which is one of the core angle of like verifying these decentralized computes. But again, how much efficient it's gonna be and how much it is not, that we have to still see once we get a lot of like scale compute coming into the network. So that is one of the issues of the decentralized infra. And the other thing is like the moment you open source it, the only problem is like those can be tweaked, make the changes, and things can just go wrong, right? So because there is no state and there are no consensus which are getting built around the state. So that's one problem. The second is like, again, the adoption side of the DPN, right? So for the centralized compute, it's quite easy. You just build API layer, somebody just calls that API and it's all done, right? While in a decentralized GPU network, it doesn't work the same way. You cannot have one single API and just make everything work. So you have to have this entire infra to be present bottom up, so to ensure is like everything just is been done. So I won't call it as a problem, but because we have already solved it at Spheron, but it's still going to be a problem for a lot of teams like who are going to be like building into this space. And it's also going to be a blocker for the adoption as well. So if you look at the DeepIn space as such, there are very limited tools and developer related services which are available, which can drive the adoption for all of these like DeepIn compute which are getting built. And that's the other challenge which we have, right? The fourth and the major one, which I always look at, is like, even though these computes are decentralized, a lot of time, I think there are teams who are already working on that, but there's a concept of, like, say, fine tuning and pre-training and training and all of those stuff, right? So in the AI space, and if the GPUs are like far apart, if let's say in that case, I don't have clusters of GPUs which are very nearby and they are very far away. So it becomes quite difficult for them to kind of attain, like, to make it happen. So that's the next challenge, right? How exactly we are going to ensure is like, I know like now what Ranveer is building is around proof of location. This can be solved, but we need to have all of these devices very nearby so that there's no bandwidth latency, very less bandwidth latency to make the training work seamlessly. So these are the couple of issues which we have identified, and we all are working toward to make it work, but it's going to be issue for a couple of months down the line.
No, makes a lot of sense. I think I'm afraid we're almost at time here. I want to open up this quickly and change gears towards our event again. Ranveer, Prashant, maybe can you highlight one of the two things from previous events, two or three things that you have in mind, what people can look forward toward at our event? Maybe Ranveer, you want to start?
Amazing. Yeah. So I think events are a great place to keep you updated on the latest things going on. But this is crypto, and so this is Web3 and everything in Web3. There are like hundreds of events in Web3. So how do you differentiate, right? So our focus is to bring a variety of sectors across the crypto space into DeepN. So if you can look at that in our previous events as well, is that we don't only focus on DeepN, we can see how traditional crypto can help DeepN, like be it through, financialization of services or utilization of DeepN services in traditional crypto apps like, market makers that use compute clusters, decentralized compute clusters, and so on. So I think our focus has been to bring, in some sense, web crypto builders to DeepN, or bring DeepN to the crypto builders. So it's an amalgamation of both of these communities, and I think that's the main value proposition we go by in our events.
Prashant, you want to chime in?
Yeah. So from our side is, again, so we at Spheron have always been focused on building that and bringing the quality discussion and the people on the ground, and also know as Ranveer also covered, like, so we have a lot of these news and announcements are going to be, but specifically from Spheron, if you are going to be in this event, you are going to hear a lot of good things which we have been like working around and how those things are shaping up. And if you want to kind of give it a try, then you should be there. Like you should be there to receive one-on-one for the first time in Singapore. Apart from that, yes, we are going to be having some amazing folks coming down there. So if you are looking to meet, greet, and learn more what is happening in Deepin and where exactly this entire space is moving forward, I think you should be in that event.
100% agree. Maybe from my side, one aspect I'm really looking forward to is the energy, right? I think in-person events just bring a whole new level of energy. And I'm really looking forward to connect with, the community, you guys. I think it's going to be really amazing. It already was in Brussels. And I think the next one is going to be even more amazing, really. I do see 2 questions we had in the comments. Maybe let's save those for the event, actually. It's a nice teaser. And maybe we can shed some light on and insights around those regulation aspects, as well as a bit of a skepticism and challenges, I would say, for the Deepin space. Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining. Ranveer, Prashant, thanks so much for being panelists here in our space. Really looking forward to meet you guys in person. And again, more or less 2 weeks from now, on the 19th of September, 12 to 5 p.m. in Singapore. If you haven't, everybody sign up to the Luma. Don't forget. Really looking forward to host with you guys, Ranveer, Prashant.
Same here.
Thank you for
Looking forward. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Thanks everybody.
Cheers, bye.